Jor-El, yes, I gotta make sure I had that in my head, is licensed therapist, author, and co-founder of Viva. He is redefining what mental wellness looks like, especially for Black and marginalized communities. From the Shadow Work workbook to Self-Care for Black Men, which is on Amazon, which I did order a few copies, we'll do a little giveaway, but unfortunately they did not show up, but I really encourage you to get it. His writing offers real tools for healing, reflection, and liberation. Jor-El brings care, clarity, and cultural truth to every conversation, bridging psychology and purpose to help others thrive from the inside out. Welcome, brother, to Black Men. I'm very excited about this conversation. I kind of told Wanty, I said, yeah, you can kind of, get Ali and lead the AI joint, even though I had a lot of things there too. I said, but I'm really interested in this wellness piece, right? And I think it's a great place for us to leave this place. At the end of the day, I want Black men to be well. I want us to be well. I want to be well. What does wellness look like? So I'm very interested in that. But before we ask the first question around that, can you just, a couple minutes, just give us the arc of your career, kind of, what brought you into wellness? What brought you into the space of wanting to be an advocate for Black men around their wellness? And we'd love to know what set you on that path. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start at the beginning. I grew up in North Carolina as a very sensitive Black boy, a lot of feelings, to an African-American mother, Puerto Rican father. And so I was speaking earlier in our little duo conversations that in my area, it was very black and white. Like literally, so there were few brown folks, very few. That didn't happen until later, middle school, high school. And so the community was very segregated by neighborhood. And my understanding of myself as like a really smart kid in school was interesting because I was in a lot of classes with white peers, and it really shaped how I was seeing myself, the pressures that I was facing, and growing up as someone who was labeled as smart early on, right, really impacted a sense of pressure and anxiety I felt to achieve. And so this, when you talk about existing in spaces, that I feel 100 times over. And that's something that happened going into higher education throughout my educational career. So, ended up at the halls of Teachers College at Columbia, one of the top schools of education and psychology in the nation. And it is one of the oldest and top schools of education in the country. And so it's a legacy of whiteness, and just being able to walk in those halls and try and find where I fit professionally was a really challenging experience. And so thankfully, I went to school there for counseling and sort of made use of my personality of like, yeah, I'm an empathetic, kind of like softy on the inside, to be honest. And so being able to embrace that and not be ashamed of feeling anymore is something I wanted to also bring to people in my work as like a counselor who works every day, but also someone who writes things specifically to speak to Black men. And so that's sort of how I arrived to Self-Care for Black Men, is sort of like that, offering some practices, things you can do to really look after yourself and accept those parts.
Gotcha. Let's get a working definition of self-care. A lot of people think self-care is, I'm gonna just go to, whatever, get my manicure, that's self-care. And it could be, right? Or I'm gonna go get a massage, and that's my self-care day. I'm gonna go out and do some running, that's my self-care day. I mean, is self-care just really about doing nice things for yourself? Or is there another level of that we're like missing? Are we just keeping it real surface? As long as I do my little run, eat what I want to eat, I need to go out with my boys, have an old fashioned, that's self-care. I need to share a bottle of wine, that's self-care. Everything's self-care, right? And so things that we just like to do for ourselves. But I always wonder, did you write a book about Black men getting massages? Or did you what is self-care, really about? Like, what is that?
Good question.
Yeah.
I love most of those things.
Yeah, me too, ain't nothing wrong with it.
But to me, self-care is anything self-care is not one thing. It is a result of something. So anything that brings you restoration, true restoration, that helps you honor your physical, mental, spiritual needs, that is self-care. So sometimes that will look like, I'm gonna get brunch with my boys, we're gonna have a couple drinks, but we're also gonna be talking about real stuff.
That's it.
Right, we're gonna be having real conversations about what's actually going on, not just talking about whatever's on TV, whatever sports thing is happening, but we're gonna also talk about those other things.
What's going on with the girls?
What's going on with the girls, you know, boys,
Guys.
yeah, everything, right? And so being able to find those activities that help you feel restored is really what self-care is about.
Can self-care though, so a quick follow-up.
Mhm.
I'm in my bag. Can self-care though sometimes be, I hear what you're saying, whatever brings you that restoration piece.
Mm-hmm.
Restoration is an important word.
Yes.
Because how do you know that what you're doing is actually restoring you? Sometimes we think that what we're doing is restoring us, but it's actually distracting us from the restoration we actually need.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like, how do we assess whether or not that wine that I love to enjoy is a distraction for me from dealing with what I really need to be restored into? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Am I being like crazy?
No,
It's more like, I
question.
feel like a lot of times we can enjoy the pleasures of a thing.
Yeah.
And we think it's bringing us restoration, but it's very in the moment, and it's very surface, and it's very like, yes, I had a good brunch, you hung over, you woke up the next day, and you're not restored, you're depleted with a liquid IV. So I really want to know, like, you know, I just want that restoration. You said what brings you restoration. So like, that's the important part of it all. So sometimes I think we over-index on the pleasure
Yes.
part, and we really haven't been brought into restoration.
Right. And so, yeah, that's why I say restoration.
Yeah.
It's not about pleasure. It can be about pleasure, but it's not
Absolutely.
only about pleasure. So this is why self-care can be a massage, right? It's why self-care can be exercise. It's also why self-care is journaling. It's also why self-care is therapy. It's also why self-care is investing in your financial health, right? It's like really thinking about not only what it feels like, but what is the outcome of the consequences of said thing, right? You can have drinks, you can have a good time, right? The next day, what's the cost of that? Do you feel good for having made that choice still? Or now are you doubting yourself? Are you feeling bad because now you've wasted half the day because you're hungover, or you don't want to talk to anyone because you're irritable and your mood has dropped down, right? And so it's really about thinking, not just in the moment, but beyond that moment, what are the consequences of those choices? And do they actually leave you feeling restored, not just feeling good?
I think we spoke earlier in my introduction that a lot of us feel like, well, you know, maybe it's just me, but that black men are kind of put on the spot to perform at high levels all the time, right? One, how do we kind of think about wellness in the context of our, yes, performance? Like it's necessary, but how do we like detach ourselves from that narrative that grind and struggle is just necessary? Like you have to feel like this. Like, is that something that is mandatory for our success? Is that a narrative we should carry on our back? Should we disconnect from it and say, you know what? I'm gonna perform because I am excellent, but y'all not gonna, you know, be on my neck all the time or feel like I'm on stage and tap dancing all the time. I need to like disconnect, right? But we know there's sometimes consequences for that as well. So like, how do we balance that when we're talking about in the context of our wellness as black men?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing I think about, and let me back up. I start with the foundational belief that everyone in this room, every black man I talk to, is valuable and worthy, having done nothing. And that's something that doesn't get communicated to us very often, especially you think about conversations that happen online about talking about like who's high value, who's not. So just think about how often you get that message that in order to be good, valuable, etc., you have to have X, Y, and Z. So I start with the foundation that it doesn't matter what you have, because you are here and breathing, you have value. You have serious value. And so I think that the sticking point there is everyone has permission to ask themselves that question. How much performance is worth it for me? What am I gaining? What am I losing? What is the cost? Where is my balance? And everyone gets to make that choice for themselves. And I think that is a crucial part because we don't often feel like we have a choice. And so for anyone who's here, my first thing I want to offer you is that you always have a choice. So we've all had these messages coming at us about who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to have, what we're supposed to do. We always have a choice. There are costs, but everyone has to do that calculus for themselves, but we are worthy of making that choice for ourselves.
Watson?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, you know, I think we're privileged enough to be in this room, in this space, having these conversations, and you're talking about, like, this choice and that autonomy that we do have to ask ourselves these questions. But there are a lot of brothers outside of this space that are never going to enter a space like this and have somebody tell them, you do have a choice, you do have autonomy to ask yourself these questions about what you need to do to be restored, what you need to do to, you know, maintain your well-being. And I guess I'm just curious as to, like, how you think we can address that reality and what systems or platforms or even, like, organizations are in place or need to be developed for Black men as a collective to be able to start having these conversations outside of select rooms like this where we're privileged enough to have this.
Yeah, I mean, we all have incredible privilege, even though it doesn't always feel like that, right? Because we are here, as you said. I think that's part of the reason why I write, is that if someone can't work with me for therapy, doesn't have access, doesn't have the funds for that, where can they be met, right? Can you be met in the pages of a book? Can you be reflected in those pages? Can it be instructive? Can it be helpful? Can it be supportive? So that's part of the reason why I write and why I try and do things to be a visible representation of the conversation we're having today. But I think what's most important, speaking to the community piece, is that for everyone who has the privilege to be here, to get my book, to get another book that's helpful, are you sharing that with someone? Are you embodying something from those things that you learned from someone who will never show up in this room? For an uncle, a dad, a cousin, a baby brother, or whatever, are you sharing something that feels important to you with them and sort of encouraging them to embody that as well? That's how we get farther. And, you know, when I wrote Self-Care for Black Men, I really tried to offer up things that, you know, a lot of different options for things that people could do to take care of themselves. And some of them may seem silly on the surface, right? Or some of them you may have done already. But the idea is that we have to meet people where they're at, but we also have to nudge them forward, right? Because that's how we progress, right? We ask a question, we opt to say something more vulnerable,